We have a limited time together, so let's use this time the best we can. We only have about 30,000 days in our life, and we sleep a lot of it, so there are about 20,000 days left in our life, and after studying and working, there isn't that much time that remains, so let's use the time that we have and learn Dhamma. There isn't any other teaching that can liberate us from suffering other than the Buddha's teachings. If we're going to practice the Dhamma, we have to have the 5 precepts. We have to keep them, and we should intend to keep them every single day, right from when we wake up in the morning, even at midday, and before we go to sleep. Remind ourselves to keep those precepts. We should keep trying to keep them. It's a very difficult, chaotic world right now, and it lacks morality. And we can't fix the entire world. It's flooded with defilements. Each country is being controlled by defilements. The politicians as well. There's so much chaos and defilement within countries, and then they spread it out to other countries as well. We can't avoid some of the effects that it causes in our lives. Technology has changed dramatically. Ways of life, ways of production, consumption, all of it has changed so much over the years. And there isn't anybody that can stop all this. Most people have mental or emotional illnesses. A lot of people feel abandoned. People all around the world. A lot of children suffer from NET. And there are a lot of people that are trying to escape from the world. In the old days, there were hippies during difficult times and war times. And now there are children, even from when they are newborns, that are not experiencing warmth and love as a child. And many are forced to work and study far too hard. And there isn't anything really that reliable in the world, and it's becoming exhausting. So many people have anxiety and depression. Some of us here may suffer from these things and force their children to learn so many different things, extracurricular activities in school, and there's so much pressure on the children, and then they grow up with so much stress. But this is the way of the world, and there's it's just part of a system, and we can't change that. It's only Dhamma that can really help us. Dhamma doesn't teach us to escape from the world or hide from the world, but it teaches us to understand the world. The world is always changing and not the way that we want it to be. If we understand the world with crystal clarity, then our heart will not be boiling over, seeing that things aren't the way that we want them and we can't control them. It's too hard to see those truths about the entire world, and therefore Buddha taught us to just the inner world is sufficient. Just seeing mental and physical phenomena that comprise what we consider to be us. If we're able to understand the inner world, then we will understand the outside world, because it is all the same thing. This body and mind are just a portion or a component of the world. So we bring ourselves to learn and study ourselves, our own body and mind. We see the truth of them and see the truth of mental and physical phenomena, then we will understand the world as well. The Buddha is the one who discovered this way, and one who understands the world with crystal clarity. The Pali world is Loka Vitu. When there's a chant regarding the qualities of the Buddha, and there's the word Loka Vitu, which means one who understands the world completely. But Buddha didn't study the entire of the world. He studied his own body and mind, and then understood, and then taught us. So how is it that we study and understand our own body and mind? That is the field that the Buddha laid out for us to study. People that haven't heard or don't understand about learning about our own body and mind, the way to study it is in the 5 foundations of mindfulness in the Buddha's discourse. There's one called Mahasatipatthana, the great 4 foundations of mindfulness discourse. There are a lot of details in that discourse. That's why it's called Maha, or great. Buddha taught the 4 foundations of the mindfulness in a former capital of India at the time. Those people that were listening to him had a lot of wisdom and understanding. They weren't an ordinary group of people that he was teaching. And so he taught what was appropriate for them. There are many great masters that are able to see past lives. Luangpu Man, one of the great masters in Thailand, one of the great teachers in the forest tradition in Thailand. Who's heard of Luangpu Tet? He's not as popular or as well known as Luangpu Man, but he was a nephew of Luangpu Man. And he's talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It is about attaining wisdom, seeing the truth, having a correct understanding about this body and mind of ours. We learn by way of the tool, which is mindfulness, in order to gain this wisdom. And it isn't just normal, everyday mindfulness. It is Samma Sati, Samma being correct or right, and Sati being mindfulness. It's right mindfulness. Like everyday mindfulness is, be mindful when you're driving your car so you don't get in a car accident. That's just worldly type of mindfulness. That's not the four foundations of mindfulness from the Buddha's discourse. The correct mindfulness is in the four foundations of mindfulness. How is it that we attain or achieve mindfulness? Regular people in the world don't have it. I used to teach at a place called Sala Lungshin nearby. In the morning, I would eat at the side of the road at a rest stop on the way to Bangkok with Ajahn Ah. And I would say to him, you see these people walking along here? There isn't one person here who's aware of oneself. People think that they're aware, that they have mindfulness. But it's not really mindfulness. It's certainly not awareness of one's own body and one's own mind. What does mindfulness arise from? If we know that, then we'll be able to achieve mindfulness. But if we don't know what the cause for mindfulness is, then we can't just order the mind to be mindful, because the mind isn't something that is under control. It's like planting trees. In order to get a tree to grow, you have to plant the seed and take care of the soil, and water it, and have sunshine and such things. We don't order the tree to grow and the fruits to blossom, but the right causes are in place, and then it happens. It's the same for mindfulness. We have to put in the correct causes for there to be mindfulness, and then it can arise. And mindfulness arises out of precise recollection of phenomena. So what are phenomena? Mental and physical states. So when the mind remembers physical and mental states, then mindfulness will arise. Within the four foundations of mindfulness, there's the instructions to have a main object or a home base for the mind, and then often be aware of this object, like seeing the body breathing out, the body breathing in, the body sitting, standing, walking, lying down, such things. So when the body's breathing out, know. When the body's breathing in, be aware of that. Or the body is sitting, standing, walking, lying down, moving around, then be aware of it. Often we aren't knowing when we're moving this way and shifting that way, moving our foot, moving our body. We're not aware. So the body is moving all the time, but we don't usually know, and that means that we don't have mindfulness. So Buddha had us to train with a main object for the mind, like the body breathing out, body breathing in, and knowing so. And then mindfulness will arise when our mind wanders, and then the body moves or shifts, then there'll be an automatic awareness of the body shifting that will kick in. I used to practice mindfulness of the in and out breath, but I didn't achieve mindfulness because I just would do it as a restful practice, and then I learned with Luangpu Dun, and he helped me to progress and develop until the point where he told me that I can I can understand sufficiently to take care of myself in my own practice now. And then when he said that, I went off and went to a bunch of different temples to have a look and see what they were practicing and what they were doing. One day I went to see Luangpu Tien, a famous monk at the time, at a temple called Sanam Nai in Bangkok. I saw him teaching a big group of lay people, and he was teaching movements of the hands and arms, 14 different positions. And I noticed that Luangpu Tien, he was moving and he was in awareness, but his students were not. Some were just busy thinking, okay, what step is next? Others were totally lost. Their mind had left the temple thinking about other things. Some people were stressed and trying to hold attention as best they can at the hands. So as I continued to observe, I noticed there are basically two different directions. Some people were tight and stressed, and other people where his minds were following the defilements and just lost in thoughts. And so there wasn't the middle way. There were just two extremes. One was too loose and the other was too tight. But the master was moving and was in awareness. He wasn't stressed and he wasn't mindless. So the way that Luangpu Tien was moving, and I saw his awareness and said, oh, well, that looks to really work well because he's a very aware master. So then I tried practicing these 14 hand movements. But I was an irritable type temperament, and it wasn't really appropriate for me. So too many movements would frustrate me, so I just did a small movement instead. So I just made fists, opening and closing, saw the body moving with the mind as the observer, and I saw that this was an effective practice. If we understand how to practice Dhamma, then it really doesn't matter which lineage or technique we follow, then we'll practice correctly if we understand the principles. But if it's just a matter of being stressed and then tired, then that doesn't work. But instead we just move and be aware. And the mind won't be heavy, the heart won't feel heavy from the moving. If it feels heavy or tight, then we're practicing ineffectively, we're practicing from greed. So I tried this for 2 or 3 days, and then I saw a person walking across the street. It was a friend of mine. I hadn't seen in a long time, and I was happy to see my friend. Now, when I was happy to see my friend, I was mindless. I didn't have any mindfulness of the happy feeling to see my friend. Often I was mindfulness, but at that moment, I was really happy to see my friend and forgot about my mindfulness. But then, when I walked towards my friend, about to cross the street, and my foot moved, mindfulness kicked in and saw the foot moving. And that came from practicing being aware of physical movements. Like I learned, I studied for a few days on my own after learning from Luangpu Tien. There are a lot of different techniques that have nothing to do with learning about our own body and mind, like staring at the earth or staring at fire or a flame. This leads us to the ways of potentially different psychic powers and stuff. But that's way outside of ourselves. We can instead have our attention move inward. And there might be psychic powers and things that arise as well, but we don't have to leave our body. We can notice the breath moving in and out. Noticing the movement of the breath is the wind, and noticing just in the space in the nostril, that's attention to space. Then there's also temperature changes, which is the fire element. So it is possible to achieve certain powers even from observing the breath. However, Buddhist practice is not about achieving these powers. These powers existed prior to Buddhist understanding, prior to liberating from suffering. There are all kinds of sages and meditators since the beginning of time that were able to achieve different abilities. But what didn't exist before Buddhism was the four foundations of mindfulness, and so people were beings circling around suffering in the cycle of birth and death endlessly without the four foundations of mindfulness. I practiced observing the mind, or the foundation of the mind, the third of the four foundations. When anger would arise, I would know so. When anger was not present, I would know so. We can also use feelings like feeling happy or unhappy. That's also acceptable as a home base for the mind. This is the feelings. Seeing happiness or unhappiness arise and fall. So we can observe the mind happy, unhappy, or neutral. So let's all have a look and evaluate inside within ourselves. It's not so hard, is it, to see it right now if the heart feels happy, unhappy, or neutral? There's physical pleasure and displeasure, and there's mental pleasure and displeasure and neutral feelings. The physical pleasure, displeasure is hard to study without deep levels of meditation, hard to study effectively without deep levels of meditation. But instead we can see the mental phenomena of observe the mind and see pleasure, displeasure, or neutral feelings. Or we can see anger. We can see that there's anger or aversion, and when it's there and when it's not there, because it is quite a prominent defilement indeed, anger. It's easy to detect. Greed is more subtle. It's harder to see when there's greed or not greed than seeing anger when there is or isn't a form of anger or aversion. like we see something pretty and then craving arises. That's a type of greed. For delusion, when the mind is lost in thought, then we can know that that's the delusion defilement. But that is the hardest of the three to see. Anger, aversion is the easiest, and then greed. And then the delusion is the most difficult. If we completely free the mind of delusion, absolutely and utterly, then we become an arahant, free of, liberated from suffering. Because within the delusion category exists not understanding or ignorance. There are some very subtle types of greed, like in deep levels of meditation, like jhana. There's a very subtle greed there, enjoying the subtle states of formless and form, material and immaterial spheres of jhana. Those are very, very subtle defilements indeed, not necessarily for us to study at this time. Let's practice seeing the things that are easier to see and coarser, and then as the mind gets more and more familiar with these states, then it will remember them. The mind will precisely remember or recollect what aversion or anger feels like, for example, and then mindfulness will arise automatically due to the cause for mindfulness being there. So if we are aware often of our breath and how it moves, then when the breath changes just a little bit, the rhythm changes, then mindfulness will kick in automatically to see that. So what else arises when there is correct mindfulness is also correct samadhi. Correct samadhi is not about holding focus on a flame or on a flower or keeping concentration on something, on an object. That type of samadhi was around long before the Buddha. The type of samadhi we need is one that is composed of mindfulness. There is no correct samadhi without correct mindfulness. So I would observe my mind move. My mind would move out to something, I would know so. When the mind was happy, unhappy, I would know so. I would observe all the mental and emotional phenomena that would occur in the mind. The mind get lost in thought, I would know. When the mind gets lost in thought, it's a type of delusion or moha called uttacha. The mind's lost in thought. It is a restless mind. So when mindfulness arises, the mind that gets lost in thought disappears, and the mind that is not lost arises immediately. And that's the mind that is aware, that is the stable observer presence. So let's have a main object for the mind, like the body, or it could be the happy and unhappy neutral feelings. It could be a mental formation like greed, anger, or delusion. Within the mindfulness of the mind, which is the third of the four foundations, it can be any of the defilements as the basis for the practice. In the first foundation, it's about seeing the body. So, knowing regularly the body, that's breathing out, breathing in, walking, standing, sitting, lying down, etc., moving. That's for the first foundation. The second foundation are the feelings, the physical sensations, and also the pleasant and unpleasant feelings in the body, and the pleasant and unpleasant feeling and neutral feeling of the mind. In the third foundation, it is mostly regarding the defilements. The defilement that happens the most is delusion, in particular getting lost in thought. It happens the most. We also get lost in seeing and hearing, but not as much as lost in thought. It's the mind that's restless, that has uttacca. So let's practice the mind gets lost in thought, and then no-so, get lost in thought, and no-so. And then the mind becomes familiar with this state, and automatic mindfulness will occur. And the mind that's lost in thinking will mindfulness will see it, and it will disappear, and the mind will have samadhi, not just mindfulness automatically, but also will have samadhi. It will be a wholesome mind. When the thinking mind disappears and the stable observer arises instead. This is the mind that has correct samadhi. Samadhi doesn't mean peaceful. A lot of people like defining it that way, and that is not correct. That's naive. Read Venerable Payutto's books. It's right there. Samadhi is a stability of mind that doesn't slip into the phenomena that arise. So when there is mindfulness that is able to wake up or be aware when the mind gets lost in thought, then it is automatic mindfulness. There will be automatic samadhi, and the stable observer samadhi, correct samadhi, will arise. So practice mindfulness often. Practice it a lot, over and over again, and then the mind will achieve samadhi. Practice mindfulness within the four foundations of mindfulness. When we have mindfulness, we'll see that, I've been asleep my entire life. The mind is just lost in dreams all day long. What is the mind dreaming? Dreaming during the day is just the mind is lost in its thoughts and stories all day. We sleep all day as well when we don't have mindfulness. It's just the body is awake, but the mind is still dreaming. So practice knowing often, not continuously, not non-stop. but to know again and again and again. If we're knowing continuously, like knowing the breath moving out and moving in non-stop, then the mind will become still. It'll be over-focused and tight. And if there is tightness, we're practicing incorrect. Know that immediately. That's a form of, that's in the too tight direction, the over-focusing direction. So try to observe mental and physical phenomena, and let's just see them as they are without interfering with them, without making the mind dull. When their suffering arises, just know that it has arisen without trying to get rid of it as quickly as we can. The mind that has correct samadhi is a truly wholesome mind that has wisdom that happens unprompted. It just arises out of its own causes because it has mindfulness. And it isn't something that we have to build up or create. If we're still trying to have samadhi that we're building up or creating on our own, that's not a wise type of samadhi. It's not the correct. It's not the ideal type of samadhi. So there's nobody truly aware, there's nobody who truly has samadhi out in this world, as I was saying to Ajahn sitting at the rest stop. When people hear things, their mind is out hearing it, and then the mind thinks something, the mind is absorbed by the thoughts. It's impossible to free the mind from suffering or get out of the cycle of suffering without the mind that has able to become firmly established as a stable observer, observing mental and physical phenomena, not getting absorbed by them. When we have visions or psychic experience or something in the mind eye or bright light, none of that has to do with the mind that has samadhi or the stable observer whatsoever. So there are the two most important tools are having correct mindfulness and correct samadhi. If we practice correct mindfulness a lot, over and over and over again, then we'll end up with very powerful samadhi occurring. And then when there's powerful samadhi, then we will achieve insights and wisdom. There won't be any wisdom or vipassana wisdom arising at all. It's impossible for it to arise if the mind doesn't have samadhi. The mind is only able to develop wisdom when there is samadhi. Like many of us who are listening to me now, listening to the Dhamma helps us to wake up. It's like we're receiving, like the sun is out and we're absorbing the sun. So listening to the Dhamma, many of us wake up and our mind is bright and beautiful and has correct samadhi. When we have samadhi like this, think about the body. Don't hold focus on the body, but just be aware of it and see that it's not the mind. It is known by the mind. The body's breathing out, the mind is the knower. The body's breathing in, the mind is the knower. The old masters used to call correct samadhi, would call it the knower or the knower mind. It is a mind that is knowing, awake, and radiant. When we achieve this knowing presence, then it's easy to see that we have been lost in dreaming our entire lives. Only the body was awake, but the mind wasn't. When the mind is awake, knowing, and radiant, then there'll be the development of wisdom, like the body is sitting here. And with the mind as the separate and stable observer, we can see that the body is moving, not us that is moving. The body is not the mind, it is something that is known by the mind. The body breathing out is something that the mind knows. Breathing in, the mind knows. The body sitting, standing, walking, lying down, still, or moving, just things that the mind knows. Pleasant and unpleasant sensations in the body are things that are known by the mind. And happiness and unhappiness, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feelings in the mind are just known by the mind. They're not the mind, they're just things that are known. The five aggregates are combine or appear to combine as one thing, just me. And then we understand incorrectly that these processes, components here, are just one thing. They're me. And I believe there's a me here. And so we identify it incorrectly and believe incorrectly. We have what's called wrong view, believing that this thing here is me. And so we need to destroy this misunderstanding by separating the different things that we are, these components, these aggregates. When we separate the components, distinguish one from the other, then we're able to see that each of the components are not a self. This is a Buddhist way of seeing the truth of non-self, by separating aggregates and distinguishing one from the other. So somebody who's never practiced, when the leg hurts, will think, oh, my leg hurts. But if we study correctly, we'll see that the body is one thing, the pain is another thing, and the mind observing is another thing. Those are three components. And then we feel annoyed. And we think, oh, I don't want to feel annoyed. How do I get rid of this annoyed feeling? Instead, we see, here's the annoyed. The annoyed isn't the body, isn't the pain, isn't the mind that is observing. So there's a fourth aggregate. And then they disperse. The aggregates disperse. And we can see this thing that we believed is me isn't just one thing, one mass or entity that is me. It has many components. And the word khanda or aggregate is the word that is used in the Pali language for these parts or components. So we practice separating the parts that we believed were a self. But in order to do that, we need to have a mind as a separate and stable observer. And once that is established, then we can see the different aggregates. See the body that's sitting there is not what is observing it. To see that the physical sensations that the happy and unhappy neutral feelings in the heart are a separate component, and they're not the mind that is observing them. So the fundamental teachings here are about being able to separate these aggregates and see that they're not a self. There are some lineages that have you separate the different movements of the foot, lifting the foot and moving the foot as two different things, or the breathing, the abdomen expanding, contracting as two different things. With the mind without correct samadhi, we're not able to see wisdom. And that's not really separating things in the sense of separating aggregates, because that's separating body with body when we're seeing the leg in one movement and then another movement. We have to separate the mind from the body, or rupa and nama. So if we're unable to distinguish aggregates from each other with correct samadhi, then we're not practicing vipassana. It isn't really vipassana at all if there is not the aggregates seeing the separate components. So that's the first step in. It's the first insight. It's the first elementary level of wisdom along the path before vipassana. Is to be able to see the mind and form as separate things. If we see the body and mind as separate things, that is the first step. It isn't vipassana yet. At one point, we'll see that that body that is being observed is not us. When we start seeing that truth, we start seeing one of the three characteristics, then that's vipassana. Vipassana wisdom isn't knowing all kinds of things, not many things. It's just very specific. It's just seeing that the five aggregates are the three characteristics. That this body is not me. It can't really be controlled. Asking it to not get sick, asking it to not get old or die. It's not within anyone's control. If we have mindfulness seeing the body regularly, we'll see the body has nothing but suffering. There's suffering oppressing it at all times. So we need to see impermanence, suffering, and non-self in order for the practice to be considered vipassana. If we don't see with vipassana, then we think that the body is something that is comfortable at times and uncomfortable at other times, suffering sometimes, not suffering at other times. But that's not seeing correctly. We see the body is achy or itchy, and then we have to do something about it. If we keep observing, we'll see the body is unsatisfactory and suffering. We'll also see that the body is impermanent. But that takes a long time sometimes to see the impermanence of the body and how it's always changing. We can see that the body is oppressed by suffering. Why do we have to wash our face and shower and pee, and get hungry and then eat, and thirsty and then have to drink? Because we're managing suffering. the body's constantly requiring maintenance, shifting this way, that way, even sleeping we have to turn this way and that way, because suffering is oppressing the mind at all times. If we're able to be aware of the body at one point, we'll see that the body is just a mass of suffering. It isn't me, it isn't a person, it is non-self. And if we observe mental phenomena, we'll see that in this mind, everything is in flux. We see happiness arise or unhappiness arise. At first, before vipassana, we see that happiness and unhappiness are not the mind, they're observed by the mind. Then we see that these things come on their own. They're not under our control. We can't order the mind to be happy and order it to not suffer. That doesn't work. It's not under anybody's control. When we see that the mind isn't under anybody's control, that's vipassana and seeing the truth of anatta or non-self, that the mental formations are not under any control. Has anybody here had a broken heart? People that, especially the first time we have a broken heart, we feel like suffering happens for so long and I'll never be happy again. There's no happiness in this world. And it takes a long time to feel better. Some people, their child tragically dies, gets in an accident, and they're suffering so terribly, and they think there isn't any possibility for happiness ever again. But after a long time, eventually, they become okay with it, at peace with it, from terrible suffering to more indifferent. How about people? How about winning the lottery? You get so happy, so excited. But then all of a sudden people start asking to borrow money and take advantage of us, and then the gladness that was there from winning the lottery, is it permanent? No, it isn't it? It goes away. So when tragedies happen or happy things happen, the feeling there is, the happiness is there or the unhappiness is there just temporarily, and then it passes. Good and bad feelings, like a bad feeling like anger. When we're angry for a bit and then it's gone, right? When we're wanting something, we're wanting it for a while, and then the wanting passes. How about when we get what we want, like a new mobile phone, and then we're happy for a bit, and then how long are we happy about this new phone, right? It goes away. The happiness that we got it disappears. So these things are temporary phenomena. Happiness, unhappiness, impermanent, greed, anger, delusion. There isn't anything that has any permanentness to it. They're all temporary states. So if we see the body is impermanent, suffering, non-self, then that's seeing the three characteristics. It's seeing vipassana. Similarly with the mind, out of the three characteristics, it's easiest to see non-self of the mind, because it's the mind, things are arising by themselves and not under control. It might also be easier to see impermanence, because there isn't any feeling that or mental state that can be sustained. When observing the body, sometimes it's easiest to see non-self or see the suffering of the body, because suffering is oppressing the body all the time. The body is not us. It is something that the mind sees or observes. That's all. It belongs to the body. It's the body. It belongs to the world. It's the world's property, and one day we have to return it to the world. This mind is not ours either. We can't order anything to be the way we want it to be, and see that the body is not us and the mind isn't us. That is the stream mentor, one who has seen and accepted, understands the truth, that the body and mind are not a self, are not us. The stream mentor has a basis and full fruition of morality. And then, as the stream mentor continues to practice, the next enlightenment, the defilements are just very subtle defilements indeed. They're not able to be anger. They're not able to be angry. Anger and desire for sense desire don't have any ability to be sustained, and so they're just very subtle. In the second enlightenment, at the third enlightenment, the mind already knows the truth that the body is not self, but it then sees that the body is also utterly suffering, and it no longer, the mind no longer attaches to the body, lets go of attachment to the body. Third enlightenment, there's no more attachment to the body. Sometimes when we observe the mind, and the mind will come to discern the body rather than the mind, all on its own, and it'll see the truth of the body, even from observing the mind. With truth from the body might be seen or discerned with crystal clear wisdom that the body is utterly suffering, is suffering itself, and the mind will return it to the world, give the property back to whence it came, to who it really belongs to. And when there's no attachment to the body, then there's no attachment to the sense organs. There's no attachment to the sense organs, then there's no attachment to what the eyes see and the ears hear and the tongue tastes and the body touches, etc. either. So there's no attachment to worldly things, sense desire. So with no attachment to the senses, then the mind has no interest in what happens in the world and through the senses, what the eyes see and ears hear, etc., in the sense that there isn't any craving for anything in the world anymore. There isn't any pleased or displeased that comes in to disturb the mind with regards to the world. The mind doesn't get lost in the world anymore. So the mind that doesn't slip into or move out through the sense organs, this is a mind that has full fruition of samadhi. The mind is the stable observer, not slipping out or being sent out to meddle in the world to get pleasure or displeasure. At the final enlightenment, the mind lets go of the mind itself. We don't see that we're totally clung to and bonded with the mind. Like we're holding up this mug. It's like we've been holding this mug our entire life and not even knowing that we're holding it. But the day that we let go of the mind, even if we let go of it for a moment and then pick it up again, we'll be able to see that, oh, this is heavy. The mind that's clinging and holding on to the mind, that's called birth. And when there is birth, there is suffering. It is heavy, isn't it? Isn't it suffering to be holding a mug all day and all night? Yeah, it's heavy, it's suffering. But we don't realize that it's suffering because we're so used to holding the mind all the time. We feel like there's somebody inside here, isn't there? We believe that so tightly. The stream enterer at first enlightenment knows there's no self, but they're still attached to this mind that isn't a self. Once a stream enterer is able to have moments where they let go of the mind, but then they pick it back up again. And they don't know why they keep picking it back up, but they can see that attachment to the mind is heavy. They keep practicing, and then one day see that the mind lets go of the mind because it sees the true characteristics of the mind. When it sees clearly the true characteristics, it'll let go. But in any moment where there isn't that wisdom, it'll pick the mind back up again. And it'll pick it up and put it down over and over on the path to full enlightenment, from the first enlightenment to the fourth. How is it that the mind never picks up the mind ever again? The Arahant sees that the mind is suffering itself. It is nothing but suffering. This is seeing or understanding the truth of suffering, that noble truth of suffering. At the third enlightenment, the body is seen as nothing but suffering and has been let go of. But the mind isn't let go of yet. It is only the fourth enlightenment at the Arahant stage where the truth of the burden of clinging to the mind is seen, that the mind is nothing but suffering, and the mind is released. And then the mind, at this understanding, the mind is returned to the world. So the fifth aggregate is returned. The consciousness aggregate is returned to the world, is no longer attached to. So understanding the truth of suffering in the Noble Truths is a different understanding than understanding the three characteristics. The Arahant understands the Noble Truths and releases the mind. The aggregates are completely released, and then what's left are elements. This mind couldn't be called the mind element or the consciousness element. It's just an element. The mind that is liberated from the five aggregates and the consciousness aggregate, what is all that's left are elements. There are no defilements left. The consciousness element or the mind element is peaceful, true, and utter peace of no defilements, no fabrication, no desire, and experiences nibbana. When people ask what Nibbana is like, all the Buddhists want to achieve Nibbana. Nibbana is peaceful, but it is peaceful because it is the cessation of defilements, the end of desire. And when there's no desire, the mind doesn't move, doesn't waver, doesn't grasp or cling, and there isn't any birth anymore. When there's no more birth, then there's no more suffering. So the mind experiences Nibbana, true peace, true shanti. This type of happiness has nothing is able to penetrate the mind or pierce the mind in any way. So it starts with mindfulness, precepts, mindfulness, correct samadhi, separating the aggregates, seeing the three characteristics of the aggregates until the mind releases the body, releases the mind. At that point, there isn't anything being carried anymore. There isn't any more burden. There isn't anything left necessary to do. The Arahant has released all the burden and released all the responsibilities and never picks them up again. That is complete safety, liberation, and peace. There's no getting old or sick or dying, because those are the business of the five aggregates. The consciousness element doesn't get old, sick, or die. Keep practicing, keep training. I really talked for a long time today because there is no homework reports. There are no homework reports today. What do we like? Put up your hand if you like listening to me answer homework questions. Okay, well then I guess I have to check on some of your homework. I do this every week via Zoom. And even during the week sometimes, lots of people are at the temple in the morning during the week. And some people have some problems and I give them some advice. Some people just come to ask for, or just come because they want some inspiration, or they come and feel discouraged and I'm not a fan of people who are practitioners who are discouraged. We have to not be lazy. I've been asking my longtime students to practice 3 hours formal practice a day, and they're looking better. If you are practicing formally for 3 hours a day, that gives you 3 hours of all good action, no chance to do anything bad in those 3 hours. A lot of people come home from work and start walking meditation immediately. But after 3 hours of walking, too exhausted to go out to the pub or go out and do something naughty at night. So by doing so much formal practice, you're being protected from bad actions and going into lowly states and potentially unfavorable future lifetimes. You're protected from these by doing nothing but practice. Too exhausted to do anything else. So I've asked us to do walking meditation for 3 hours, and some of us are too old and it's too difficult, and then just practice formally for 3 hours, whether it be walking, sitting, or a mix of both. The big weakness of lay people, non-monks, is that there isn't enough samadhi. The mind doesn't have samadhi, but if we practice formally for hours, then we'll have strength and we'll have samadhi and we'll be able to develop wisdom and truly progress. But those of us that practice too loosely and don't practice enough and just fair weather practitioners, and tiring. Why haven't progressed? Can I have some blessings? Please give me blessings, or ask for me give me wishes to gain enlightenment. I don't like these types of requests. It doesn't come from laziness and asking, it comes from training and working hard at the practice. We have to be strong, practice efficiently and correctly. So that's all for today. May we all practice diligently and we will be happy. There you go. There's your blessings. Train, practice a lot, and you'll be happy. That's your wishes and blessings for today.